Well, hello and welcome back to Jones Financial Talk. Listeners, this is Nick Jones from Jones and Associates Premier Financial Solutions. If you'd like more information about what you hear on this great show today, a couple of different ways you can find that information. The best way is probably just to go to our website at jonesfinancialtalk.com. When you're on the website, you can click on the radio page. Lots of our listeners like to look at our past shows. You can subscribe to our program on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And you can also request any information about what you hear on the show or anything from our firm. You could also alternatively just give us a call here in the Rogue Valley at 541-500-4321. And that's a great way to get a hold of us as well. But, today what I wanted to talk about is what happens if you become an executor of an estate. And certainly this is a significant responsibility that somebody has handed to you, somebody that has complete trust in you, right? And if you've handled something like this in the past for a spouse or a parent, you understand how difficult it can be to go through both the legal and ethical responsibilities with, of course, the emotions that are involved when somebody passes away. And so during the show today, we're going to consider some of the steps that I think would make you as an executor the most successful and maybe make that estate plan transition a little easier if you follow some specific steps. And so I'm going to bring in my co-host, Mr. Tony Shore, who's going to join us and help us explore this topic. Hey, Tony.
Hey, Nick, great to be here. Good to see you today. I'm excited about the show. That's a great topic. In fact, I've been dealing with this quite a bit because my grandfather passed a year ago, and his estate, I had to meet on behalf of my dad because my dad's older. He's 80, and because it was so messed up, and they made his brother the executor of the will, and the estate, but they didn't have things set up. There wasn't great communication. So it was a big problem. So I'm glad we're talking about it today. And I've heard horror stories from so many people, and there are so many things that can be missed and that people should have as the person who's setting up their own estate, to communicating with the executor, or being prepared if you're going to be the executor of an estate, like your parents' estate. So this is a good topic. But before we get into that, I had a great weekend. I spent a lot of it outside. It was my son's birthday this past weekend.
Nice.
It was officially International Record Store Day.
Okay.
On Saturday. So that was
And
fun.
those of you who can't see Tony, because we do this on a video
Yeah.
podcast as well, usually he is in his own private studio where he's got how many records, Tony? How many are you working on?
About 5,000 record albums
Only
and
a few. Only a
about
few.
10,000 CDs. I've been collecting a long time since I
Yeah.
was in junior high. But yeah, I've had and I'm a lot older than that now. Let's just put it that way. But yeah, I'm a huge music nut. I've been in radio. I've worked as a radio promoter for record labels, and I've been a radio announcer. So I've gotten a lot of free product, records
Yeah, I
and
bet. I
CDs and
bet.
cassettes over the years. But I also collect them. So yeah, it's a big day for me. Wait in line outside the record store for very limited releases. It's always a lot of fun.
Sure.
To my wife's dismay. Takes up a lot of money and space, but
Yeah.
but there you go. Well, Nick, how about your weekend? How's your week been? I know you've been really busy with work.
Yep, we just thankfully got through tax season here, and that's always a busy, busy time of the year. And
Sure.
the good thing about getting through something like that is it reminds us of important topics that we need to discuss with our clients. And clearly, being an executor of an estate and estate planning is just so essential. I have worked very, very hard in the last couple of years to hone my own skills in this set of very, very important needs of our clients. And so I'm excited to talk a little bit more about that today, Tony.
Yeah. Well, that sounds great, Nick. And I think that is very, very important. It is a great topic. It's like you say, it's an important one. Where do you want to begin?
So, the first thing that I think people need to think through when they're named as the executor of the estate is how they're going to communicate with everybody that's involved. You need to set some expectations for yourself as well as all the beneficiaries that are tied to that estate. And, if you do so, you're going to reduce some of the confusion and anxiety that comes through settling an estate. And, this process, even if it's done simply and correctly, could take a few months. It could be as long as a few years, depending on the types of assets that are owned and how complex the estate is. And so you need to be prepared by explaining to everybody and communicating very, very effectively with everybody that's in the group about the ideas, how the process is going to take place, and as developments occur, just keep everybody on the same page. It's in the best interest of yourself to settle things correctly, and that's what people should depend on you for.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think you make a great point there, and, most of us know that, hey, there's no pleasing everybody. You're never gonna please everyone, but communication is the key. I saw that with my grandfather's estate. If he had just sat down with his 4 children and adult children and explained his goals to them and they talked it out, would have been huge, right? But it was just him, and then toward the very end, just him and the one he appointed executor and an estate planning attorney, and that didn't go so well.
Yeah. And it's interesting, but it's clearly very, very important to have all the specific documentation available. The
Yeah,
trusts, the wills, the powers of attorney, both healthcare and financial. But almost equally important, other than legal documents, is solid planning with a written kind of description of what you really require and what you really want. And if you don't have that opportunity to sit down with those beneficiaries, like the idea that you mentioned there, Tony, at least if you have it written down, people can read
right.
letters, they can understand what's going on. So that's important, but often people ask me, well, what's the first step when I become the executor? And the biggest thing, and people call us obviously all the time and say, unfortunately, my spouse passed or my parent passed. What do I do? And,
Right,
the first thing that you're going to do as the executor is you're going to start obtaining the death certificates. And so,
right.
most likely you are going to secure some services from a funeral home for a viewing or a cremation, of the burial. And so often the funeral home will help you in obtaining these death certificates, and that makes things a lot easier for you. If they can't help you, though, you can also contact your county clerk or recorder for assistance. Now, this is a waiting game. Unfortunately, it does take quite a bit of time to get some of those death certificates organized, but you need those. That's the biggest thing.
Yeah, you do. Death certificates are huge, and you always need more than you think you'll need, right? Is
Yes.
that correct? That happened to me. That happened to my mom when her parents passed. I remember her going through that. And then my grandfather passed, and I remember my dad needing so many copies. And my grandfather's estate planning attorney, who I'm not going to go into it on the show, but was not good, not a good one. I got another attorney involved that really helped straighten things out, but he did not get they did not get enough copies of the death certificate. And
Not only copies, but obviously, originals are very,
well,
very important
original.
too.
That's what I mean.
And
Original. You
yes,
need to get multiple original death certificates, like 10 or 12, right?
yeah. And what happens is we just brought on a client this week that had an what's called an inherited IRA. They inherited some money from one of their parents. And guess what? When we open that account, guess what's needed? The death certificate, even
Yep.
if the parent passed away 10, 12, 15 years
Yeah, it
ago.
doesn't matter.
That's important. So you've got to order lots of those and keep them for the
Yep.
indefinite future for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Death certificates are huge. You can never have too many. So what's next?
So then you obviously would want to, make sure that you figure out where the deceased person's estate documents are. You're going to have to track down the will, the trust, and other relevant documents that they may have had on file. If these documents don't exist, then your task is going to be much more challenging,
Yeah, it
right?
is.
And in that situation, you probably are going to even require the assistance of an attorney that can help you through that process. Um, as we talked about a little bit earlier in the show, you're also going to want to determine if that person left a letter of instruction. And that is not necessarily a legal document, but it often goes into more detail about what the person's intentions were with the scope of their estate. And that's document that was probably very, very beneficial for the beneficiaries to be able to read, to understand what they wanted.
Yeah, and that's the second time today, Nick, you've mentioned the importance of all these estate planning documents like wills, trusts, powers of attorney, all of the important paperwork. Your office actually has a tool that you use to give to your clients at no charge to help them with this process, right?
We do, because here's what's the most important thing, Tony. You could have all the documentation in the world, but if somebody can't find it or they don't know the most recent updated versions, it's not going to be helpful. And
Yeah.
so, what we offer for our clients is what's called the Generational Vault. It's a highly secure online safe deposit box. And inside that Generational Vault, you can safely store very, very essential financial documents like your will and healthcare directives, powers of attorney, insurance documents, and they're all in one spot. And the good thing is you can give access to specific people, access to those documents so that they have everything in one spot that's in a secure location. I've got a very, very interesting story. Actually, I had a client that I was helping that started at our firm 15 years ago or so, and I did not know them. And my brother worked with them. And, back then, she actually had a trust created. And when she had some issues with dementia, she knew, or her boys knew which one was supposed to be in charge, but they had no idea where the documents were. And
Oh,
guess what? Because my brother Hurstel put that will and trust documentation and the powers of attorney into our generational vault system, we had access to all that. So that's just a very, very great tool that you can utilize. And got to realize, if you just leave something in your safe at home and the person that's supposed to help you doesn't have a combination to the safe, or it's not copied somewhere, where what happens if we have another fire like we did in the Rogue Valley and your house burns down? Like, all of that stuff is gone. You've got to have some backup, and Generational Vault is a great, great tool that we utilize to do that.
yeah. Yeah, I think that's really important. And you hear of celebrities like Aretha Franklin, sometimes they say they died without a will, but in a few of those cases, I read that they actually at one point had a will or said they did, or an attorney thought they had done a will, but they couldn't find it.
Yeah,
So like you say, that happens. And it happens to celebrities too, often.
definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah. I mean, look at the
Um,
mess Prince left. Holy cow. Of course, when you die young and unexpected like that, but
sure.
his certain aspects of his estate are still in litigation in the
Yep.
courts. And nobody saw a dime and nothing got straightened out for at least 2 or 3 years in. So,
Crazy. Crazy.
yeah.
The other thing is, or I guess the next thing that people should look at is understanding and trying to list out all of the financial institutions and life insurance companies, for instance, that the estate that they're settling is going to was involved with.
Sure.
And you got to be sure that you understand where all the banks were and where the money sits, and how to file a claim based on that specific situation. And so the best way is obviously to track this very, very carefully and take good notes. I myself just use something as simple as Excel, but you can use many different things to make sure that you understand all the different positions that clients have, and where your friend that you're helping settle their estate had money, whether it be different investment accounts, different life insurance policies, different annuity policies, different bank accounts. Um, and it's just, you gotta be organized, right, is the biggest thing. And one other thing to consider, Tony, is it's possible that some checks are going to be received by this estate and payable to the deceased, which means you'll need all their banking information to make those deposits. And
Yeah.
if you move too quickly to close these accounts, it could become very, very difficult to cash any checks. So you want to take it slow, understand that there could be lots of things that come in that you're going to have to figure out with them.
Yeah. Yeah, and I've heard that horror story too, where people will close the bank accounts and then a check will come in for their deceased loved one that they just closed the account on, and then it's a real mess to get that
That's right.
check cashed or do something with it. So that's another great point. But you've made a lot of great points. But I think the key is work with a financial advisor, a professional who can help you keep everything in order, work alongside your estate planning attorney. How can our listeners get a hold of you, Nick?
Yep. So if they just go to our website at jonesfinancialtalk.com, we've actually got some good estate planning information on our website. They can request further information there for sure, or just give us a call at 541-500-4321.
All right. Now, in the first segment, you talked a lot about setting expectations, obtaining copies of the death certificate, locating those estate planning documents, and making a complete list of financial institutions, life insurance companies, and doing this all before the person has passed, figuring out who your executor is going to be. And then if you're named executor, make sure you figure these things out as soon as possible. That's great. But what's next?
So it's very, very important to think about where income is coming in from in an estate plan. Okay.
Sure.
And the reason why I say that is it's very important that you promptly contact people like Social Security so that those payments are stopped and that any eligible benefits are paid to the estate. To do this, you'll need their Social Security number. And if you aren't sure what to do, if you just reach out to your local Social Security office, they will help. If the deceased person served in the military, then their estate may be eligible for veteran benefits, and you can get more information about that just right online at va.gov. If you want to help with Social Security, you can go to ssa.gov for that as well. Also, you got to be aware if there were pension benefits that were being received by this person, you've got to make sure that you alert them to what's happened and get instructions for filing a claim and get details about any potential survivor benefits. That's a big thing. Those three sources right there, Tony.
Yeah, yeah, that is. Now, um, uh, the executor of a will um, also might end up having to pay some of the deceased person's regular bills, right? You might be
Definitely.
in charge of that. I mean, not that they have to pay it out of their own pocket, but they may be in charge of figuring all that out. Is that true?
Yes, in certain circumstances, definitely debts that are owed are going to have to be settled in the estates, in the estate settlement process. And, probably for a 3 to 6 month period after the passing of a loved one, you're going to want to screen both their incoming physical mail and their email so that you can collect bills and statements and notices related to all of their accounts and insurance policies. You also want to be sure that you are reviewing their credit card statements to locate subscriptions and other reoccurring charges that you can quickly cancel, right? We've all got those. Um, it's not a bad idea to also notify creditors and credit card companies that you see on their credit history. I mean, think about it. There's lots of people that use dead people's information to still have, cyber issues out there. And so you want to make sure that all the three major credit bureaus know about the death. That can be done very simply online or over the phone. Um, you also are going to want to locate, where all those very, very important documents are that could be deeds to their property, titles to their real estate and cars and things of that nature. Um, just so you can start working through things. And then a big thing is tracking down, the computer file or printout that includes all of the digital account passwords. I mean, prior to a person's passing, many family members often try to help streamline this information. You're going to want to log into all these websites and make sure that that nobody else has access and that you are appropriately shutting some of these accounts down.
Yeah. Yeah, that's tough. And you got to watch out because you're right. You got to be careful with these things. That's another thing you can help your clients understand so they don't get caught up in something like that. And again, use something that's secure online safety deposit box, the generational vault.
Sure.
That comes in handy. I mean, that is fully encrypted. And I think that's really important. So what's next?
So if the person that named you as the, executor of their estate was still working, then you also need to obviously take a couple more steps. You need to contact their employer, their human resources department, to alert them to the news. They may ask you to fill out tons of different paperwork about retirement plans and health benefits and compensation for many different things, including like unused vacation time, for instance. Um, if the person owned a small business or professional practice, then you definitely would want to have a conversation with business partners and the main attorneys that advise those businesses. And then, finally, if they still had, say, children that were in college, you're going to want to contact the school's financial aid office to inform them of what happened. Depending on the school and the estate's financial situation, the surviving child may qualify for some nice additional assistance. So that's definitely something to talk with them about.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. So tell us how you fit into all this, Nick. I mean, when people want to get their estate set up or if they're going to be named an executor, what's your role in this?
Yep. So advice is the biggest thing. Helping coaching them through the process is a very, very important thing. Understanding the situation that they're going to go through and coming up with ideas to make things easier. There's tons of things that come up during settling somebody's estate, everything from debt obligations, investments, retirement plans, insurance policies. There's just tons of things that you could utilize a financial services professional for to help you better understand the tax implications of inheriting these assets and also the best way to disseminate them. And so clearly you want to follow the deceased person's strategy of what they were trying to accomplish, but don't just feel like you got to go it alone. There's tons of specific situations where if you make the different decision along the way, that can be hugely beneficial for everybody involved. So you just really have to talk to a financial advisor that's a full certified financial planner, in my opinion, that has dealt with estate planning and is familiar with reading trusts and wills. I do this a lot for my clients to understand and make sure we're putting them in the best situation possible, Tony.
Sure. And before we get into the next segment and what's next on the agenda, I just want to remind our listeners if they want to utilize some of the tools you offer for enhanced planning or estate planning, all they have to do is go to jonesfinancialtalk.com. It's as easy as that, spelled just like it sounds, jonesfinancialtalk.com. And from there, they can go to the show page, go to your main website where there are a lot of estate planning resources and tools for them. And if they have questions, all they have to do is pick up the phone and give you a call, 541-500-4321. Now, let's move on to our final segment. What's next on the agenda?
Yeah, and just to kind of reiterate and talk on that for just one second, Tony, if you're working with an advisor and the only thing they're doing is talking to you about the products that you own and
Yeah.
telling you about the markets, you're doing yourself a disservice. I mean, I can save my clients as much in taxes and estate planning as I can in investment returns. Think about that, listeners. That's the truth. If you don't know how to appropriately organize your estate and talk about tax topics, you're just going to be way behind. It doesn't matter how much you make if you lose 50% of it to taxation or things are structured incorrectly and people that you don't want to get your estate get it. And so the enhanced planning process is extremely important and I take it very, very seriously because it's so detrimental. I've seen so many times new clients that have come to our firm that did not have things structured correctly, and it just really can hurt. Not only would you have to go through things like probate to deal with this and have the government likely end up figuring out for you who's going to get the money. It also means mostly that your money is not going to go to the people that you want, and you're going to pay your beneficiaries are going to pay way more in taxes than they should. So
Yeah.
enhanced planning is a huge thing that you've got to be working with your advisor on.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. For sure. So, what's another important part of this if you're named executor or you're looking at doing enhanced planning?
So clearly you're going to have some very specific situations that you may need to work with, depending on how old the beneficiaries are or who, I would say, this person that passed away was helping care for. If it's children, maybe you have some specific custodial accounts that you need to work with. If it's
Right.
somebody that it was a spouse that's in long-term care, clearly there's going to be some different needs and desires of how you're going to help them settle their estate. And so all of those things are going to come into play. And I guess that's part of the reason why you're going to go and sit down and talk to somebody like myself so that you can get some ideas. Education is key, Tony, and that's just the most important part.
Yeah. Yeah. Education, education. And, I think there's probably a lot of grandparents and parents listening out there who are in agreement that, hey, giving an 18 or 19-year-old kid access to a big pile of money is not a great idea. No matter how mature they are or how much you love them, probably not a great idea. I know,
Yep.
if somebody, when I was 21 and I had inherited a big pile of money and somebody had just given it to me, I'd probably, not only would the money be gone, I'd probably be dead in a ditch somewhere, Nick.
I
Uh,
get it. I get it. And so because of that, Tony, you are correct. I mean, if at the most basic level, you should be doing significant beneficiary planning on all your accounts with your advisor. But if
sure.
your advisor is not apt enough to talk about trusts, wills, powers of attorney, and then do those things with and for you, like we do for our financial clients, then you're probably working with the wrong person. I mean, a trust is a hugely beneficial piece of legal, documentation that is absolutely needed and makes things so much easier. But it might not be the right thing for everybody. Maybe you need to form an LLC for your company or a specific partnership. These are all different tools that potentially are going to transfer the assets of what you want directly to somebody specific for a specific reason. And so, if it's done prudently, using one or all of those alternatives is just going to definitely make you have such a more sound plan. And so, there are always things that come up. For instance, alternative strategies that you should talk with your advisor about, having to do with state laws. In Oregon here, there's a state taxation that is crippling for many, many families. And so all of those important things can be handled well before, if they are just talked about and
Yeah.
planned for.
There you go. Communication. We said it at the beginning of the show, and your point is to that right there. Communication is the key, and working with a financial advisor who's looking at your big picture, not just the estate plan, but your tax situation, your investments, your retirement income, and retirement funds. All of that has to be taken into consideration. Trusts, working with estate planning attorneys, these are important things to avoid expensive and costly mistakes later, like probate and causing family disharmony. You don't want to leave your loved ones with a burden or create a problem. And I saw it happen with my dad and his siblings. They always got along great, and now three of them aren't talking to each other
It happens
because
all too often,
yeah.
unfortunately.
Yeah, it does. So we want to avoid that. We're out of time for today's show, Nick. Let our listeners know one more time, though, how they can get a hold of you.
Sure thing. Just go to our website at jonesfinancialtalk.com or give us a call here in the Rogue Valley at 541-500-4321.
All right. And that does it for today's episode of Jones Financial Talk with our host, Nick Jones.